All right, let's see if we can get that. Um, where is my? All right. Okay. So the last question on that interview was this one right here. So this is how I solved it. So you're given this starting number, and that's the first number you're going to pass into this function. So let's see here. I'm going to assign result, and I'm going to pass in the array list of functions dot again, because we always have the accumulator and current function. Starting number is given to me. It's starting number, right? So it's starting number is equal to 5, so I initialize it to that 5 right there. And here's the trick. So here's the logic. If it's an even number, like 0, 2, 4, then run function. Okay. That's the logic. So how I'm going to test that is question in your other programming languages. How would you normally test for an even number? What's the operator? What's the operator called? Modulus. So same thing here. So normally you would say something like this: if I modulus 2, right? However, where is this I coming from? I forget if I taught you this, but in .map, in .filter, in for each, you can actually insert either a second parameter or third parameter of .I. Did I teach that before? Yeah, okay. So this could be anything, IDX, index, whatever you want to say. That'll be your accumulator. I should be recording. Yeah. I'm gonna say yes. If you can test that, that would be great. Actually, okay, let me test it first. Wait, do I still have it under? Yeah, I do. You can see some inception effect. Yes. That's what reduce is. It's sort of like that movie Inception. If you anyone see the movie Inception? Like, I forget. Was that like a dream within a dream or something? Yeah, that's what this accumulator is. Your connection is your magical connection point between all the different dreams of reduce. Okay, so just remember to always return your accumulator every time you do something to accumulator. So if it's an even number, I want to run it. So if 0 mod 2 is 0, or if 2 mod 2 is 0, I want that to be true. So I'm going to say opposite of that. So I'm going to put in a not of that. I'm going to put that in its own brackets there. And then I'm going to say return. Okay, so where's John? John, remember that I kept on asking you how do you run a function? And the answer was like parentheses. Remember that? Yeah. Okay, so here's John. Same thing. I have a function here. There's an arrow function. It's now currently represented by this variable. So think of current function as just a function. Okay. So how do I run that function? Okay, good. So I'm gonna run parentheses on that. But what's the parameter that I pass in? What do you think, someone? What am I going to pass in here to pass in? Okay, so how do I pass in, for example? Yes, well, ACC, exactly. Okay, I'm gonna pass in that. Otherwise, if it's odd, I don't care about it. Just return that same ACC. Don't do it, don't run any function. And let's see if that works. So let's console log my result. Is Quokka still working for me? I don't know if sometimes Quokka stops for some reason. So I just get rid of it and get another Quokka going and then paste in and I should see something. Still not working. Oh, bottom of the array. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I should get rid of this. Thank you. There it is. There, 399, done. Right, so that's the answer. Here is a little trivia. Okay, actually, you already know this. So you know about the whole ternary operators, right? I think I taught you that, where you have to use the question mark and then, okay, let's turn this into a one-line ternary operator. Okay, so I'm going to comment this out for now. Oops. Okay. I'm going to write the same thing in one line using the ternary operator just for kicks. ACC current function I. And here's my ternary operator. Why am I getting all this stuff? I'm going to say not I mod 2 mark and run my current function passing in the accumulator. Otherwise, just return the accumulator itself and start with the starting number. And that's it. That's the whole line. And it should still give me 399, which it does. There's the one line of, oops. There's your one line of code. I want to reduce it. Okay, so that's it for reduce. I know it was a brain teaser. Let's move on to actual nice, understandable things that I think you will like. I'll need my Quokka, so let me get that going. I've given you a link somewhere here under course information where the syllabus is listed. I listed one book in particular, I thought. And no, I didn't. Okay. If you ever Google this guy's name, Axel JavaScript, there's one book that I really like from this guy. Let me show you that book. Books, and it's free online too. So these are all the books that this guy created. This one in particular called Exploring ES6. If you have a chance to just take a look at this chapter right, oh, where is it? Free online version. This chapter, the first time I read this chapter, Core ES6 Features, it just explained a lot to me because it says what the old way was, what the new way was, what the old way is, what the new way, and it just goes through the old versus the new. So from var to constellet, you know, from if, remember the iffy? From iffy, you don't have to use this iffy stuff anymore. Remember this stuff here? You don't have to use that anymore. You can just use regular blocks like this, squiggly bracket, that's it. That's the same thing. So if you ever have a chance, just go through that. I'm going to go through just the core stuff that I think you'll need to know. I see a lot of stuff on Twitter where the survey is, what is your favorite ES6 feature? And all the time, the #1 answer is destructuring. That's what I'm going to teach you right now is destructuring. Okay, should make your life simpler. And it looks like this. So I'm going to put this in. You don't have to do this, just watch. Times tip. Okay. So if I wanted to call that function, I'll say calculate bill 100 0.13 0.10 console log. So obviously these are regular functions that you all know and love. Big deal. Here's where it gets interesting for ES6. They introduced default arguments. So how would you change this code if the tax and the tip were not included? So if I did not have this tax, and if I did not have that tip, and I just called the function using one argument with a function that has 3 parameters, currently it's not working. Here's the solution, default arguments. So for the tax, you can say equals 0. Actually, hold on. Before I even do the new stuff, how would you do this in the old way? You'd probably say something like this. You'd say if tax equals undefined, then do something, etc. Right? Or another way to do the same thing is tax equals tax or 0.13. Have you ever seen code like that before? This is a nice shorthand to do the same thing, right? So if tax is undefined, it'll evaluate to false. Because we're using an OR operator, an OR operator will, knowing that this first one is false, it has to see if the second one is false or true. So it will evaluate this. Therefore, this is now this. That's one way to do that. Anyways, you now have default parameter. So after the tax parameter, you can just say equals 0.13, for example, and tip equals 0.10%. So 0.10. And that will work. See, my Quokka is now saying $123 instead of the nan before. So that is tip number 1. JavaScript ES6 has introduced default parameters. Not a big deal. You probably have that in Java and other languages. Yes. Then good question. Let's get into that. I'll eventually get into different ways to do the same thing. So remember in another class I said, like, we can actually make this function more robust. I'm doing that process right now. So basically, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you the old way, and we're going to gradually make this function like more robust so that you can pass it anything you want, even nothing, and it will still work. Okay. So if and you could change that. So if I didn't want that, to answer your question, if I didn't want 0.13, if I said in calling my function 100 and I had a 20% tax rate, notice it still works, right? So this 0.20 is now overriding this 0.13. So this 0.13 only applies if nothing has been passed in, to answer your question. Question, if I want to skip the tax entirely, so I only had the total in the tip, could I do that? Let's try this. Can I just say like this? I do something like that. Doesn't give me another. I said that one. Or you could just say undefined. Either way, it doesn't matter because I said the default parameter there. Okay, so here's where it gets a little bit more interesting. I'm going to show you, but we're going to come back to this calculator or calc build function in a second. Let me just comment that out. I'm just going to show you something called destructuring objects. So I'm going to write down an object based on a TV character that you probably know. Here is an object person. Question, how would you normally extract the first name and the last name? So normally you would say something like this. First equals what? Where's Gagan? Dot first in this case, right? So if I said console log first, it should work, and it does. Now, what you could do, imagine that this was huge. Imagine that this was a huge object. So you had first, you have last, you have 20 plus. Imagine having 20 plus lines of code like this just to get the variable. There's a solution. There's a new solution for that. Here's the solution. You can destructure it. Let's say something like this. Const first, last. I'll even put in links, although you don't have to, equals person. Check it out. Console log first, right? Console log last, log links. So instead of 20 plus lines of code, I have it all done in one line of code. To get like just the Twitter link? Yeah, you could. Okay, you tell me. You tell me right now. So how can I get this Twitter using the same kind of technique? So I'm going to say const Twitter. I want just that one equals what? Anything else? Yeah. So console log Twitter. Enter. This concept of destructuring objects is beautiful in JavaScript. Everyone is gravitating toward this technique. Everyone loves this style. I'll show you why in a second. So now let's go back to our calculator. So let me comment this out for a second. Here's why it's becoming beautiful. Back to this for a second. How would you change our function to use destructuring? Instead of having this, for example, I can, so what's going to happen is this. I'm going to have, instead of passing like just a single amount, I'm going to pass in an object. It's called amounts. Okay, so this amount is going to be an object which I'll define right now. And inside here, I'll have maybe total is $100, tax is 0.13, tip is 0.1. Okay. I'm passing this. How do I now adjust parameters here? Here's the answer. Using destructuring, the same destructuring that you just learned. Using the squiggly brackets, I can extract. It still works, see, 123. Here's the beauty of using this technique. Do I care about the order of total, tax, and tip? Can it be tip, tax, total? It'll still work. It'll still work. Whereas before, the old way, I had to care about the order of total, tax, tip because I had to call it total, tax, tip in that order. Here, I don't have to. That's why everyone's gravitating toward this technique. Everyone's gravitating toward passing in objects instead of passing in parameters with single. That's the way to do it. Okay. It's nice, right? This is like, it's not like reduce. This is like the nice stuff, right? So, all right. So going back, let's see here. So let's make this more robust, just like last time where we added in default arguments for tax if it wasn't included. How would you now make this more robust if tax was missing? Use answer, we learned it already, use default parameters. So how would you use default parameters in here? Easy. So first of all, let's take away tax here for a second. So tax is gone, okay? And we have not a number, which is wrong. Just like before, we just say equals 0.13, and now it's back to normal. Okay, let's do the same thing. Let's make this more robust. What if I didn't include the tip? So let's erase the tip. See, now it's broken, not a number. Let's put in argument for that. Now it's back to normal. Okay. Let's try if I didn't include a total. That's an empty object. I'm passing in an empty object. I broke it. Let's make it more robust. Okay, let's put it in empty a zero amount for the default. Now here's the kicker. Let's make this really robust. Let's have no object. I want to make this work. Yeah, it's kind of, yeah. So here, if this object doesn't exist, which it does not, then just like how I did this style here with the equals and give it some, I'm going to say equals, give it an empty object. And it works. See? 0. Not only that, you can rename your variables. Let's say, for example, for whatever reason, I didn't want to use total. I had to use some other name. Let's say, for example, I have to use these names instead of the other names for whatever reason. You can actually rename. So beside each of these object properties, you could say this, colon, and then give it whatever name you want. Colon tx, colon tp. It works again. It's not a number anymore. So let's try it again. Let's say const amounts object, and they'll say total is $100, and let's pass an amount. What is it? We're back to normal. But this is now a robust function, right? I could say I could pass in nothing. I could pass in everything. I could pass in not even give it an argument. It'll still work. It's very robust. Not only that. So notice, remember how I said everyone is gravitating toward the style of passing in an object into a function? Well, not only that, but everyone's gravitating the other way. They're returning an object. Instead of returning just one value of a total, they're returning an object. So that is another style. So let's try that. So let me erase this for a second. Let me just, for simplicity, let me go back to the old way of total tax tip. And then here, we'll say, we'll call it 100, 0.13, 0.10, okay? And we'll find this to constant results. And then console log results. Okay. So instead of returning one return statement that gives in like a number, we can return an object. Okay. So we can say something like this. You can say, you know, okay, just to keep it simple, I'll just return the same exact amounts just to keep it simple. Okay. So tax is whatever, total times tax, and tip is total. So here, notice what Quokka gave me. It gave me the correct object, right? I got $13, I got $10 for the tip, right? So this is the secret in JavaScript to return multiple values from a function, because normally you can't return multiple values, but it's not really returning multiple values. It's still returning one value, namely an object, which is 1, but within that object you can have multiple things. So in a pseudo sense, you're returning multiple things. Okay. Now check this out. Knowing now that this function returns this object that looks like this, you can now, instead of saying const results, because before, how would you get maybe just the total? You'd say console log results dot total, right? You don't have to do that anymore, because if there's 100 of them, you don't. That's painful. What you could do now is destructure right away inside here. So const total tax and tip. And then now you could say console log total, console log tax, console log tip. This is a nice, elegant way to receive to destructure an object that was returned. So if you can maybe try to incorporate this in your own assignments in JavaScript in the future, you don't have to, but try to pass in an object, try to return an object, and then try to destructure that returned object. And because the beautiful thing about this is, what is the benefit of using this technique is you don't have to care about the order, right? If I could say tax here, I could say total here, or tip maybe, and say total here. It doesn't matter, it still works. That's one benefit. But even a better benefit is, what if I don't care about total and tip? I just care about tax. Okay, fine, just delete it. It'll just throw it away. You don't, and it'll work. See? Total, forget. There. See, it worked. Isn't that beautiful? That's the point. So that is destructuring objects. What time is it? 3:17. I'm going to show you now destructuring arrays. Destructuring arrays kind of looks like this. So let's say we have, okay, let's just get rid of everything. Const ingredients equals potatoes, garlic bread, and basil, okay? So question, what's the old way to get elements? If I just, let's say I want tomatoes to go in here, and I wanted, you know, garlic bread to go in here, and I wanted basil to go in here. How would I normally do that in the past? I'd say ingredients 0, right, and then etc. So here's how to destructure a new way. You can just say in one line. Now I'm using array brackets, not the squiggly brackets. Fruit base garnish equals ingredients. Let's console log that to make sure it works. Let's say that you didn't actually receive an array. Let's say you received a string. So let's delete that for a second. Let's say you received a string that was that looked like this. Well, let's say you did some kind of fetch, I don't know, and you got a string instead of an array. I want this to result in what it was before. How do I do that? You could say ingredients dot split on the comma. That will give you an array, as you know, and that array can then be destructured into the normal. So now it's working as before. Okay, so if you ever are in a situation where you get a string and you want to turn it into array, use this dot split, and then you can destructure based on that. What happens if you don't have equal length? So let's say this string had more stuff. It works. It just ignores it. What if you want to, you do care about this, how to capture that? And I believe I talked about the rest operator. So the rest operator is 3 dots, kind of looks like the spread operator. Then you could say whatever variable you want, seasonings. Now here, if I say console log seasonings, you should get an array seasonings. You get an array of whatever was left over. Okay, so if you only care about the first couple, you can destructure it like this. If you don't care about the rest, you could have a rest operator and then ignore that if you don't care about that. Okay. Here's a cool thing about destructuring arrays. It doesn't have to apply to arrays. And let me ask you this. All of you have probably done this in your other programming classes. If I had like let A equals true and let B equals false, question, how would I swap those variables? What would I need to introduce? So if I want to swap these values so that A is false and B is true, what would I do? What would I need to introduce? Yeah, exactly. I'd need to introduce a temporary variable to hold something and then do the swapping. You've done that. Okay, check this out. When I first saw this, I was, yes, this is amazing. Look, all you have to do now is this. Put these regular variables into these array brackets. And just go like that. Done. Let's test it out. See? Let's put that before and then after. Isn't that elegant? This is why JavaScript is ruling the world, I think, because just the language, it's improving very nicely. Everyone's gravitating toward the beauty of the language. Yeah. So everything that I taught you today is just, it applies. Yeah. What time is it now? 3:22. I'm going to show you 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to show you a few more things, and then we'll call it a day. So here are some new array methods that you ought to know that came in. So let's go back to that inventors array. Where's that inventors data that I had before? So I'm going to use that right now. Copy that. Okay, so let me just one. Okay, great. So you have do this. You can say inventors .find. So this .find will work on any array. And let's pretend that this year, let's pretend this year was really like an ID number. Okay, so we're trying to find this person that has the ID of 1879. How would you do that? Something like this. You can say if person dot year equals 1879, and return true. Otherwise, just return. Let's take a look at that console log of the inventor result. And there it is. See, it returned that one element in the array that passed the test. Not only that, but if you ever need just the index of that, they have a new method called find index. So I'm going to change find to find index, and look, it gives you the index of that element in the array of 0. Right? If I change this to 1643, it should change to, accordingly to 1. Other things you ought to know that doesn't get enough love is this. Let's say we got our inventors, okay. I'll just say results. I'm going to have a variable here called is 1800 or more. And this is, well, it's not an ES6 one, but it still is something you should know. So you could say, you can pass in a test is there at least one person in the array that passes this test? So is there one person that has a year that's greater than 1800? It'll only give you true or false. So the two methods that you ought to know is the dot sum and the dot every, which are both Boolean methods. Okay, so it'll give you a true or false. That's it. So that's something you might want to know. Put in your back pocket. And then the second final thing I want to say is this: the spread operator, which I've already said. So let's say I want to make a new array. What I can do is if I wanted to put this array in here, and then maybe insert something brand new in the middle, and then maybe put this in the end, I can simply do this. Spread operator, 3 dots, A, comma, something new, comma, dot, B. Let's take a look at that console log C. Look at that. Nice, elegant, sweet, simple. Okay. Question, how do you copy an array? You can't simply say const C equals A, because remember before, you're just having a reference, right? So if I change something in C, I'm also changing something in A. So what's the answer? The answer is just do this, spread. There, now you're getting a copy. Okay. So back to our calculator, Bill. Let's go back to our simple one again, our traditional one. So if I wanted to call, if I had an array of, let's say 100, 0.13, and 0.1, and I wanted to call that function, calc bill, I'm going to pass in this array. What I could say is spread operator array. There. So there's 3 use cases right there for spread array. You could possibly use it in future assignments or just in future in general. And I think, oh yeah, there's one more thing I wanted to say, maybe more depending on how you're feeling, but I did want to mention this. Question, trivia question, what are the fundamental data types in JavaScript again? Number, Boolean, string, null, undefined, shoot. I had an acronym for this too to try to remember. What was it again? Where I take the first letter of each of those and it makes a number, makes a weird. Shoot, what was it again? Anyways, the point is, there's a new data type that I've never introduced to you ever called symbols. I've never used it in my practice, but I just want to put it out there in case you need it. So this is how to use it. Const a equals this symbol, and give it some string. Okay, so let's pretend you had an object, right? And in the first thing you had like this, and then you had whatever. So this, instead of having this, you can now represent it with this whole thing. So let me just delete this. The benefit of using symbol is it gives a unique identifier and it avoids naming collisions. So let's pretend that you had actually, let me just show you one quick thing. So const A is that. If I say const B equals the exact same thing, watch what happens. I'm going to say console log A gives me this. Console log, B gives me the same thing. But if I do a test, does A equal B? Or does A equal B? Oh, how come it's not? Oh, how come it's not showing? I better console log. False. So any kind of testing of equality, it's always false because symbol gives some kind of like unique identifier like this. So whenever you see this kind of thing, think, okay, it's outputting like some unique like hash number like that. And it's so weird that it's unique. It'll never be, replicated by mathematically impossible to replicate. So whatever. So that's what the benefit of this is. So let's say another example is, let's say you had a class list and you had two people with the same name, Joe. And maybe Joe had 80% and this other Joe had 70 or something. What you could do is you could wrap this Joe in a symbol. I still won't like it, so you still have to put there. There. And then if I console log class list, see, it just knows. It just knows that this is the hashtag for A12357, and this is the hashtag for Z6. It just knows. All you care about is what's in here, so that you can work with it nicely. But in the background, it's using some kind of crazy hash number, so that it's unique. I just wanted to throw that out there in case you ever need it. But that is the 7th newest fundamental data type that JavaScript has. It's good for security purposes and whatnot. Okay, and I think that's all I had for today. Okay, I did have some more, but I don't think I'll. I think you guys are done. So, any questions? How about classes? Yeah, you can use that symbol stuff for classes. Is that what you mean? Oh yeah. So here's yeah. So here is your schedule. So week 11 is this, week 12 is this, and week 13 is this. I believe classes will come in here. Okay. All right. Let me show you a preview of what to expect for next week, because I was working on this last night at like midnight thinking I was going to use it today and I didn't. So at least let me just put it out there. I think, yeah. It's going to use your webcam. Photo booth. Click. It counts down. You have to pose and smile. Posing again. It's counting down. Notice on the side is making the strip. And right. And not only that, if you click on this, you can save the actual picture to your desktop. Pic.jpg. Yes, replace it. And let's take a look at it. And there it is. All right, so that will be your lab next week. hopefully you'll come back for that as a teaser, because I spent all this time at midnight and I didn't use it today, so I'm showing it now. So yeah, that's it. That's the end of class for today. If you have any questions, let me know. Let me stop the recording.